Caligula slipped quietly into the bedchamber, a dagger held firmly in his hand. In the darkened room, lit only by the low glow of a brazier in the corner, the shadow of Emperor Tiberius, Caligula's adoptive grandfather, slept fitfully in his bed. The rasping breath of the 77-year-old signalled that his reign over the Roman Empire was nearing its end. Caligula tightened his grip on the dagger. After all the torment Tiberius had inflicted on his family, his father, his mother, his brothers, all dead, while his sisters were bartered off to ambitious men eager to claim the divine blood of Caesar Augustus, why should Tiberius be granted the peace of dying in his sleep? What peace had he offered to his grandmother Julia when he starved her to death, or to his aunt Julilla, whose exile had been quietly sustained by the Augusta until Tiberius cut off her funds the moment the old woman died? And what of Sejanus, that grubby commoner who had done all the dirty work to remove Tiberius's enemies, only to be discarded once Caligula's family had been destroyed? No, men like Tiberius didn't deserve the luxury of an easy death. There were many in Rome who would have liked to see him suffer as he had made them suffer. The allies of Sejanus swept up in the witch hunts that followed his execution. Senators, equestrians, families torn apart. Only one man had dared to stand against him: Gnaeus Cornelius Gaetulicus, commander of the legions on the Rhine. His daughter was married to the only son of Sejanus to survive the purge. When Gaetulicus's name surfaced in whispers of treason, his association with Sejanus too dangerous to ignore, he had written to Tiberius. The message was clear. You praised Sejanus for years. If I am guilty, then so are you. If you wish to try me for treason, come and get me yourself. Otherwise, rule your empire from Capri and leave me and my 8 legions to Germania. But most had no legions to give them such backbone. And so they were tried for treason and executed one by one, while their broken families were left behind, nursing their grief and craving their vengeance. Vengeance Caligula could deliver now, with a single thrust of the dagger gripped in his hand. But what would Macro do? If Caligula murdered Tiberius in his sleep, would the Praetorian prefect declare him emperor? After all, Tiberius had named him joint heir, alongside his cousin Gemellus. Or would Macro cling to the letter of the law and hand him over for prosecution? Caligula laid the dagger down on a small table beside the old man's bed, then turned and walked out of the chamber. Let Tiberius see the blade in the morning. Let him realize what Caligula could have done. Lying in bed with his arms behind his head, Caligula stared up at the ceiling, his eyes tracing the frescoed images of the gods atop Mount Olympus. The symbolism of the imagery reminded him of the hypocrisy of Tiberius, enthroned atop the cliffs of Capri in his glorious Villa Jovis, as if he was a god among Romans. But he wasn't. The god had been his great-grandfather, Caesar Augustus. Curled up next to Caligula in the bed, one hand draped across his chest, lay Ennia. Her breathing was steady, her warmth constant. But it wasn't love that passed between them. Caligula knew that. He hadn't lived with Tiberius for 6 years without having learned the hard truth that everyone wanted something from him. What passed between them was something softer than ambition, but colder than devotion. Why, though? The woman was in her 40s. What could she possibly want from him? Her body stirred and her eyes opened. "You're awake," she acknowledged quietly. "I'm always awake," Caligula replied. She propped herself up on one elbow. "It's Gemellus again, isn't it?" Caligula didn't answer. The truth was, it wasn't just Gemellus. It was Macro too. The Praetorian prefect who had taken over the post of Sejanus held the future of Rome in his hands. When Tiberius drew his last breath, it would be Macro who would decide whether the Praetorian Guard supported his grandson or the adopted grandson. It was said that Lucius Aelius Sejanus had trumped up charges against Caligula's brother Drusus because he needed someone younger, someone still a child, for Tiberius to appoint him guardian. Drusus was already an adult, but Caligula wasn't. How much more pliable would a child like Gemellus be for Macro over the last living son of Germanicus? The son of Germanicus, Caligula thought. Was that still important? His father had been dead for almost 2 decades. Was the name of Germanicus still the rallying cry it once was? Did the Roman people even care anymore? Caligula had been living on the island of Capri ever since Tiberius brought him here 6 years earlier. He really had no idea what the Roman people truly felt. At that time, Tiberius had begun to question Sejanus's ambitions. He needed to remove potential pawns from the prefect's reach. So Caligula, along with his cousin Gemellus, was removed from Rome under armed escort, personally overseen by Suetonius Macro, the man who would soon take Sejanus's place. Also brought to the island were Caligula's young wife, Julio-Claudians, and the sons of several senators whose families Tiberius had begun to suspect. They were given food and comfort, entertained with swimming parties and Greek poetry readings. But it was luxury under lock and key, life inside a golden cage. When his wife Claudilla died in childbirth, she left behind a young man stricken, not only by grief for her, but for the child who had never drawn breath. Then came Ennia Thrasilla, the wife of Macro and granddaughter of Thrasyllus, Tiberius's Egyptian astrologer. With just the right blend of motherly concern and womanly intuition, Ennia's comfort soon took on a more physical form. It was from Ennia that news came now, quietly, in passing, as if it didn't matter. That was how Caligula learned of the charge against Enobarbus, his sister's husband, now accused of treason and awaiting trial by the Senate. Caligula had not seen his sister in years. Not since Tiberius dismantled what was left of Germanicus's family and scattered them to the wind. But Enobarbus, he had once served under Germanicus on the Rhine. He had married Germanicus's daughter. That counted for something. Or did it? Was this truly treason, or just another name on Tiberius's ever-growing list of enemies? The old man was obsessed with rooting out conspirators. Multiple times he sent messages to the Senate saying he would soon return to Rome. But always, after such promises, came new accusations. Another group of senators arrested, another round of treason trials, and more executions. Then, silence. Tiberius remained on Capri. It had become a ritual, a game of paranoia, and those who were in any way attached to Germanicus were watched most carefully of all. Like himself. Finally, Caligula pulled his eyes from the ceiling. How did one guarantee the support of Macro? He had made it clear early in his command that he would not be bought with flattery. When the Senate tried to court him with public honours, just as they had once done with Sejanus, Macro had rejected them flatly, even threatened reprisal. He would not be blinded by ceremony and titles. Then Caligula sat up slowly, turning to face Ennia, an idea forming in his head. In order to guarantee the support of the Praetorians, Macro would need something he couldn't refuse. Not a bribe, not a title, but a future. Something that offered a legacy for his children. If Macro delivered him the empire, then Caligula could offer his children a future far greater than Macro's current station could ever provide. A smile crossed Caligula's face. If Macro secures the Praetorian Guard for me, he said, then I will make you Empress of Rome. Ennia's face froze. And if Macro divorces you willingly at that time, Caligula continued, I will make him prefect of Egypt. He will have more wealth than he can spend, and your children will have prospects never imagined. Ennia's face fell. You know Macro can't be bought with a promise, she reminded him. I know, Caligula replied, so I will sign a contract with him. Then he added, with a glance toward the doorway, but Macro has to sign his name to the contract, as well. Sitting inside the small skiff, Caligula and his friend, Aulus Vitellius, another noble youth summoned to Capri by Tiberius, because his father had once supported Germanicus, and then later Agrippina, drifted through the Grotta Azzurra, or the Blue Grotto, heading toward the mouth of the cavern and the open coastline beyond. The blue water beneath them had an otherworldly glow, casting a shimmering aura that made the cavern walls dance in rhythm with the rippling waves. The flickering light illuminated a solitary statue of Neptune, god of the sea, and 6 tritons flanking him, each frozen in marble, along the grotto walls, blowing their conch shells. Caligula and Aulus had come to the grotto, as they often did, to spend the afternoon swimming, taking advantage of the temporary solitude the cave offered, away from the ever-watchful eyes of Tiberius. But now the tide was rising, and it was time to go. If they didn't pass through the narrow mouth of the cavern in time, something only possible while lying flat in the skiff, they would be trapped inside until the tide went down. After passing through the cavern mouth, the skiff hugged the coastline until it reached the harbour. From there, Caligula and Aulus began the long ascent up the carved stairway that zigzagged along the cliff face, pausing at the terraced rest spots built for weary travellers to catch their breath. Just as the sun began its descent, Caligula and Aulus crested the cliff top, only to find servants of Tiberius waiting with horses and pacing nervously. "Come quick, Dominus," one of the men urged. "Something terrible has happened." Caligula and Aulus mounted the horses brought for them, and the party raced towards Mount Tiberio and the Villa Jovis. Once again, Caligula stood over Tiberius, but now there was no ragged breathing, no sign of restlessness. The old man lay motionless, his mouth slack on the left side, as if his face, like warm wax, had begun to melt. His left arm curled stiffly against his chest, and there was no sign of life. "When did it happen?" Caligula asked in a sombre tone. The physician attending him shook his head. "He came in for his afternoon nap. When he didn't come for dinner, I found him like this." Caligula took Tiberius's hand, feeling the swollen knuckles, stiff with age, but not yet hardened by death. He still had time. Caligula slipped the signet ring from the emperor's finger. Proof at last that Tiberius Caesar was dead. The first person he showed the ring to was Aulus Vitellius, still waiting outside. Caligula pressed it into his palm. "Fine macro," he urged. Aulus bolted down the corridor. Behind them, a handful of attendants had begun to gather, drawn by instinct, by whisper, by the shift in the air. Something had happened, something important. As Macro came rushing up the corridor, Tiberius's physician appeared beside Caligula, pale and breathless. "He's awake," the man whispered desperately into Caligula's ear, sending a jolt of cold fear down his spine. "And he wants his ring back." Caligula froze. Then he felt Macro's hand on his arm, firmly driving him back toward the room. He didn't resist. Step by step, Caligula walked back toward Tiberius's bedchamber, toward his own execution. Inside the room, Tiberius lay twisted in his bed, his left arm curled and twitching, spittle running from a deformed mouth that shouted again and again, "Ring! Ring!" Caligula stood motionless, frozen in place, too terrified to run, too afraid to move. Then Macro stepped forward. The Praetorian prefect grabbed the bedding that had bunched at the emperor's flailing feet and yanked it up. He then pressed the bedding hard over the old man's face. Tiberius thrashed and kicked. Macro leaned in, his weight steady, merciless. And then the struggling stopped. The body went limp. The room fell silent. Macro turned to face Caligula, who had not moved, standing as if trapped inside a dream. Then he produced a contract, tightly furled and held closed by Tiberius's imperial signet ring. "Hail, Caesar,"